are watching, they know what's going on.
Oh, okay.
And then they just...
Where do you stream it on? Facebook?
YouTube.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. So youtube.com/romancing the capital.
Oh, okay. Oh, I do remember seeing that in like an email or something that you probably sent me, or maybe it was on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's all coming back to me.
Something like that. So just say hello to any readers watching live or later. We are just waiting on Vaughn to come back, and then we will be talking about apocalyptic and dystopian fiction. Oh, our video is frozen. Let's see if we can fix it. All right, now we're better. All right, I am Jessica Ripley. I also write as Renee Hewitt, and I have Miss Bonnie Lynn Carroll with me today. Bonnie, do you want to talk about your writing with dystopian fiction? That's kind of your Blue Harvest book, right?
Yeah, it's not quite done yet, and I decided to change it from dystopian to have it more like the event that would cause it to become a dystopian type book. So I did completely change it. But you and I are working on a dystopian one together that we've also decided to change a bit too, but that's definitely more of the dystopian thing. But what I really enjoy about the whole dystopian world thing is basically like creating an alternate universe on this planet and creating new cultures and norms and stuff like that. Like, because my background's anthropology, so I love looking at like the cultural aspects and world building and like what would they wear, what would they eat, what would the terrain look like, and then how did whatever event make it, look like that, like stuff like that. I don't know. I love reading dystopian stuff too.
Awesome. Hi, Eve. Welcome back.
Yeah, for some reason I was under my daughter's name because I've been doing like her school lessons on this computer too, so she has a different sign on.
Yeah. Interesting times we're dealing with.
Schooling has been fun.
So we're streaming now. Do you want to introduce yourself and let us know what about your dystopian and apocalyptic books?
Okay, my name is Vaughn, and my dystopian, I have a dystopian apocalyptic series. It really isn't, well, it didn't start out as a series, but it's like 3 books that just kind of intertwine, and it's my Run series, and it's basically about a dystopian, not too near future, maybe about 100 years in the future, where people are the commodity, and the gap has become so far between the haves and the have-nots, that basically, to have, it means you own other people, or people have to subject themselves to like very humiliating things to survive, and like auctions and like women selling themselves, unfortunately, the deregulation of companies. And I mean, it's sort of sad because it's kind of where this country is headed right now, unfortunately. But I mean, hopefully I'll be dead before that happens, but
Yeah. And we have Miss Jennifer Wedmore joining us. Jennifer, introduce yourself and tell us about your dystopian and apocalyptic writing.
Hi, sorry I'm late. I was at the store and it took a little longer than I thought it would today. I write in various genres, but apocalyptic, I have trouble saying that word, it's horrible, and dystopian are my favorite to read. I have one out that fits dystopian, and 2 more I'm working on. Mine is called Wish Us Luck, and it's a small town that gets quarantined. And then they realize that they're the only ones stuck in the town. Everybody else got out, and it's their trip for their stay. And I'm working on this sequel. It goes bigger than what it is, but it's not your typical dystopian because it's not like worldwide. So And then the sequels. I was working on it this year, and then when all this happened, I was like, "Yeah, we're just gonna put this one away for a little bit."
And I think, that's the big question. So that's what I want to ask next is how has any of the things that you've written, like, are they showing themselves now to kind of make you feel weird about that? And how has what we're going through now changed how you will write your future apocalyptic and dystopian? Let's start with Eve.
I mean, I kind of touched on it a little bit. I feel like a lot of companies are getting like the deregulation of a lot of of things, especially in this country. Like the EPA, is not as powerful as it used to be. Some things that are questionable about our environment. It's going to be, there's like environmental, like things against like, economically disadvantaged communities that, will affect proportionately poor and brown people. Just like the pipeline in South Dakota that's adversely affecting like our Native American population. So like things like that, like impactful environmental things that are affecting us now, I see that carrying over into some of the things that we might write or I might write in the future.
For sure. How about Jennifer?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I love the books where they, the dystopians in the future and the society's already been broken down. So I'm always curious how it got to that point. So I tried to start my story with that, going to that point, and I'm telling you, right in the sequel, it's what we're experiencing has changed it because services and businesses stayed around longer than I would have expected. So it really kind of changed how I thought it would go, I guess is what I mean. I would never expected, grocery stores and, restaurants to be one of the last things that were open. It makes sense, but it didn't really register, I guess. I hadn't thought of it like that. And the lawn service still goes around cutting people's lawns and stuff like that. It's like little things that I never would have thought to put in there is now changing because, we're seeing it, and I mean, obviously we're not in a dystopian society, but this could become one so easily. I think that it makes it, I'm like constantly writing down notes going, oh, look, they're still doing this. It's been quite interesting for me.
Yeah. Bonnie, you'll have to unmute yourself. So I'll mute everybody when you're not talking we had this crazy loop happen that I swear I felt like it was a spiral to hell. I don't know what happened this morning. So I'm just keeping everybody muted. So just unmute before you talk.
Okay, yeah. I was kind of thinking the same thing as what Jennifer said. Because in Blue Horizons, it's kind of more like the start of the dystopian event where aliens invade or whatever, and it's kind of like, oh, this could still be open, or what it would look like if the government urged people to stay home. So I've been kind of thinking about stuff like that. But then also this whole experience, I also kind of want to think about what if it got worse than this and people had to really be alone. Maybe I might want to write something more like that, just look into the solitude behind it. And then if let's say you can never contact anyone ever again, what would that be like? Would there still be ways to communicate? Will we still have the technology to communicate like we are now? So I think it's kind of interesting. It's given me some ideas to work with, stuff like that. And also the thing about what would happen, what might the government do? And also what if the government led people in the wrong direction? What could happen? And then maybe, stuff like that. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Oh yeah, on that note, you do have another what year sorry, Bonnie and I know each other from way back. We were kids together.
Forever.
But yeah, you have your short story collection. And what's your story in there where the government comes and they have the farm and
yeah, it's where they basically the economy crashes. What the heck did I even call that one? I think it was the day the soldiers came. Yeah, and it was the economy crashed because everyone got a college education, but then couldn't get jobs, and then so eventually it was just cheaper and more conducive to just live off the land, make your own food and stuff like that. So the government couldn't collect tax money because no one was really working anymore. So it's kind of like these thugs came in to try and get money from people, steal their land and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess it was kind of dystopian.
Yeah. So now I want to know, how do you think that the genre has changed in the last 5 years? And how do you think it's going to change after this? Let's start with Eve. Oh, Eve, can you unmute yourself? Sorry, I muted you.
Forgot. So the question was how has it changed in the last 5 years?
Yeah, like 5 years ago, what was our dystopian fiction like versus now versus where we think it's going to go now?
Well, okay. Well, I mean, like one of the first dystopian books I read was like George Orwell's 1984, and that was basically like Big Brother's watching, and I feel like we're already there. They're watching, and so like the next like big dystopian thing I read was like the Hunger Games, and I feel like the way we're headed, we're heading to the Hunger Games. With the way this pandemic is going, you know, a lot of people are at work, and then you know people get desperate when you're hungry and famine. So like, what will the government do to try to keep us under control? So I feel like like future dystopian books are probably going to maybe surround pandemics, just because this is what they're living in, and you know, and people. I feel like the last thing that swept the country was maybe like yellow fever back in the like early 1900s, and some of us haven't been through anything like this before. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of interesting stories coming out of the pandemic.
For sure. Jennifer?
I think, much like Eve said, it's the government. And I think in our current climate, we have to worry about what supporters may do trying to, I don't want to be say anything upset people, but I'm like, I really worry what some of the real extremists will do to support our current president and his views, and that I think could push us, you know, into this war, basically, you know. And you know, my the sequel to Wish Us Luck, I actually was researching the CDC because it was like a pandemic going and it was spreading, and I was like, I'm not writing this right now. I'm learning way more than I wanted to about the CDC, and it's just crazy. But yeah, I really think that if we're not careful, we're going to end up in a Hunger Games thing. And I'm District 4, by the way, so if anybody's around, I got you.
Bonnie?
I think it would be interesting to see maybe more like polarization of groups of people, kind of like people like Eve and Jennifer were saying with like the current climate, how it's like everyone's becoming more and more polarized. Like, what if there is a civil war? So I wonder if people will start exploring stuff like that more. And I think definitely we might see some more pandemic stuff, because even when the pandemic started, there was an increase in people watching movies like, what is it, Contagion or whatever. So I wonder if maybe this might lead to more people reading dystopian novels, because it seems like they might be like, oh wow, this is kind of interesting. Because like I never finished 1984. And Fahrenheit 451, I didn't finish that either. But like I really enjoyed the Hunger Games. The Divergent series was good. So I just hope it'll lead to more stuff like that. Oh yeah, the Match series too. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that one. So yeah, I just hope it leads to more diverse types of dystopian novels, because I think there's so many ideas out there, and this might inspire people to write more.
Yeah. We have a question from Ayanli in the YouTube chat, and they want to know, given what's happening today, what do you think could be one thing that will make our current world slip into a dystopian future? So basically, if we're on a slippery slope, what might push us the rest of the way? Jennifer, let's start with you.
I think, like I said, I think it would be extremists trying to prove their point that would start a back and forth, I think. Yeah, I think it's everybody's tempers are so high right now and fears are so high that anything, that little tip over to send us there. I really, yeah.
Yeah. Eve?
I think the wrong leadership. If we continue on the path that with leaders who inflame instead of uniting, I feel like we're heading there. So I feel like yeah, the right leadership. And maybe unplugging a little bit because being on the internet all the time is not healthy. It makes you crazy. I had to detox from Twitter and the internet and in general, and I felt a lot better because just doom scrolling it's just not really good for anybody's mental health. And I was watching a documentary about a woman whose father watched a specific news channel. I'm not going to say the news channel, and it made him angry and it made him isolated from the rest of his family members. And then for some reason, something happened to him. I don't know if it was like he got sick. He stopped watching it, and then little by little, he started turning back to normal. So I feel like a little bit of is media brainwashing too. I mean, as long as the media continues to sensationalize, I know people like say fake news. I feel like there is an element of truth to that sensationalism. So sensationalism, people say that the leaders are bad, but you keep, you know, showing these leaders and you keep, talking about every single thing that they do, and it's not just this country, it's every country with like a crazy leader. I know, you know, they're always in the news and the bad stuff is always louder than the good stuff. So I feel like unplugging, people need to step back away, from
Yeah.
watch Netflix. It makes you happier.
Yes. Well, that's a real interesting point. The stepping away and like that's a story there. You're talking about the guy who's watching the news and then he gets sick and it's like he starts to deprogram. Like
Right.
there's a plot bunny right there. Like add to that all of the the Facebook troll bots and Twitter troll bots and stuff. And there's some plot bunnies happening there.
Yeah.
Bonnie, what do you think for Ayani's question? What could be the one thing that pushes us to the dystopian future?
I don't know. I kind of always feel like we're almost on the verge of war. Like if we because we have a leader in our current country who has a tendency to say whatever pops into his head, and it's not always unoffensive. I'm trying to think of the most politically correct way to say this, but I'm just always afraid he's gonna like upset the wrong person who has a similar personality who then has something to prove and has to prove like I have the bigger power. Like I just feel like nuclear war might be closer than we think, or even a civil war in our own country, or, because I just feel like maybe with the internet, people are becoming more and more polarized. And I read, oh, my cat's okay, she was going away. Sorry. She's going to pop up and get me. But I read somewhere, like, if the search engines notice that you read more liberal stuff, they're more likely to give you more liberal articles, and vice versa. If you're more conservative, it's more likely to suggest more conservative articles, and it's just leading to this polarization. So I think it's just the internet's not helping.
Yes, very true. I want to know, so at least for me, like the last big thing like this that happened that felt like the end of the world was 9/11. And obviously we weren't going to write like romance about 9/11. Like some of them probably happened, but it was such a hard topic. But I kind of feel like maybe out of that, we got more like military romance, military heroes, like just heroes that were going to save us that way. In the same vein, what do you think we might see out of this that isn't necessarily about pandemics, but maybe a revived interest in, say, scientist heroes or, nurses and doctors? So non-dystopian, but coming out of this weird area. Let's start with Bonnie.
I completely thought about what you already said, like maybe more with romances with doctors, maybe like a doctor saves someone and they fall in love, like maybe that type of like hero stuff, or maybe a therapist, although you're not supposed to date your patients. But I mean, I think we suspend the rules of reality when we write. So, oh, my cat's hitting my earphones. But yeah, I think definitely maybe more like medical type themed romances.
Eve?
I unmute myself every time, right? I can see some paranormals coming out of this, like maybe mutated people, maybe some. I don't know, maybe because my twisted brain works, like maybe some people who had gotten the virus and their genes had mutated into something different. I can see a lot of stories like that. I can think of some stories like that. I think, maybe vampire stories. I don't know where I read it. I've read somewhere that paranormal stories are more popular in times of economic depression for some reason. But I can see a lot of paranormal stories coming out of this, like either vampires or mutated people, superheroes. I could see superhero stories coming out of it, just people being everyday superheroes, or just ordinary, super ordinary people in a time of economic depression or struggle.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So, because after this is over, what effects might, yeah, that's very interesting. How about Jennifer?
My first thought was like doctors and nurses and stuff like that. I know a friend of mine writes for submits to Harlequin, and she said the medical dramas right now are going crazy. They can't get enough of them. So I kind of think that might be a trend coming out. But I kind of think we're going to see more apocalyptic side. I think people are going to be like, I Am Legend. The vaccine comes out, and paranormal type apocalyptic. I think that's going to be a surge too, but should be interesting either way.
Yeah. Yanli wants to know too, do you think that YA books are leading the way in dystopian and apocalyptic fiction, like The Hunger Games and Divergent? But all three of your books are adult fiction, adult aimed, right? What do you think about that, Jennifer?
YA dystopian is my go-to genre. It's my absolute favorite. My book is a clean read just because my kids wanted to read it. They're older now, but they weren't at the time. I don't know why. A lot of people, when they go dystopian, automatically think young teenagers, saving the world. I'm not sure why that lends to each other. But yeah, it's my favorite to go to. So I'm good with more books in that area. Yeah, I don't know.
Bonnie, how about you? Is Blue Harvest, is that YA/NA or is that going to be adult?
It depends on, because sometimes I have swearing problems, so it kind of depends. But I don't think I try to keep the F words out of it. I don't think I really say anything too bad, maybe a couple S words, but so probably more like young adult, just because I feel like, I don't know, my stuff isn't all that serious, or like, I don't know, I guess it's kind of developed, but yeah, and there's a lot of dark, really dark themes, so it's more young adult, but I do really enjoy the youth dystopian ones, but I'll have to count how many swear words are in it.
But now, Eve, yours are very, very adult, right?
Yes, they are very adult. I call it like Run, for example. I call it like Hunger Games with a lot of sex, and it's just basically, yeah, it's Hunger Games with a lot of sex in a way that the women are being chased or hunted down, and they're naked, and but I do like YA. I really love YA books. I still read them myself. I like Hunger Games was really what got me, into wanting to do like my own type of dystopian book, but a little bit more spicy. And I feel like YA does lead the way only because you see it gets adapted into theaters and movies and television shows more than the adult stuff because it's more appealing to a broader audience. It's got the younger, good looking people in it. So I feel it leads the way in that sense. Is it more interesting than the adult stuff? Not all the time. I kind of like the adult stuff more, but I do find the YA stuff still very compelling. So I feel it leads in that it's got a broader medium, but I don't know if it tells a more compelling story than the spicier, more adult. Because I think we go in more in depth and whatnot, especially with science, huge scientific writers, big sci-fi writers. Trying to think of some names right now, and I can't even. My mind is going a blank right now.
Yeah, it's one of the things I wonder. with like, uh-oh, did we lose Eve? She might have disconnected instead of muted. She'll come back. But with YA, like, what is it that makes the younger characters kind of more interesting in the apocalyptic, like, plot and setting? Like, is it because they have, welcome back, Eve.
Hit the wrong button. I
Yeah.
meant to put myself.
Yeah. So my next question was, when it comes to the YA/NA, are the characters more interesting because when you're younger, you have more hope, and maybe when you're older, you're more cynical? Like, sitting here with going through what we're going through now, we're more, worried about paying the bills and are we going to have a job versus saving the world? And is it the kids at home going, this is weird, let's figure out a way to save the world? What do you think? What do you think, Jennifer? Unmute.
It wouldn't stay down there long enough for me to hit the button. It just kept going up and down. I'm like, stop. Those are really good questions. I have a 19, a 17, and an 8-year-old. So it's been interesting how they react to the situation. I've been following this since it started in China. I don't know why. I was watching it over there. I just had a feeling it was going to come. So they had been aware of it longer than a lot of people. And they're watching it closely, but you're right. They have a different reaction where, I've been furloughed since the middle of March. So I'm worried about how we're paying the bills and everything. And they're just, can we go when can we see our friends? It's a completely different mindset. So I think that's why YA isn't easier when it comes to this, because you have that hope. Whereas we're all just like, oh shit, where's the zombies now? You know what I mean? We're waiting for the next shoe to drop, and they're like waiting to go back to normal. They don't see it the way we do. So I think that's why YA is the stronger in this genre, is the more common trope. And honestly, I like it better because I don't have to worry about somebody trying to pay their bills, and they're just going to go out and save the world, and I get to go along with them. So I like that reality break.
Well, and looking at it from the perspective of you being a mother too, like, your worry is your family. Like, I don't think Katniss's mom wanted either of her daughters to go, but if she left, she'd be leaving her daughters. I mean, I don't know how that would have worked. What do you think, Eve?
I do think that YA is a little bit more hopeful because of the youth aspect, and usually with the way the YAs are written, particularly with a female protagonist rather. There's usually like a love triangle, like will she or will, and so there's always that thread, that love triangle is thrown in there, and I think sometimes that can kind of overshadow the book in some ways. Like, my absolute favorite dystopian book, I finally remember, was Stephen King's The Stand. I love that book, and it's so complex, and it's like, breaks down good and evil, and I like how it just goes like all these different characters and their motivations and whatnot. And there was some romance, like tinges of romance to it, but it's so complex, because they're mostly all adults. Some of them are teenagers, but like, it's just I think it breaks down to like a deeper level. And whereas YA, I feel I'm not saying that they're not well written. Some excellently written YAs, and a lot of them are. It's just, I feel like it doesn't go as deep. That's just my opinion. I mean, not that they're not enjoyable. I really enjoy them. I mean, I reread The Hunger Games in a heartbeat. So yeah, I sometimes feel like the love triangles kind of overshadow it, because nobody really talks about, what the Capitol was doing to the people. They're like, oh, you take Peter or Gail. I'm like, it was like some real life stuff going on here. So yeah.
That's true. Bonnie, what do you think? Why is your character in Blue Harvest younger versus an older heroine?
I think it's part of it is just the character development in general. Like, I'm gonna touch on psychology here for a moment, but the personality doesn't fully develop until you reach your early 20s. So it's kind of like this: the character has to figure out who she is, like what her real values are, and usually it's like there's a stressor where like things that they thought were true really aren't true, and then they have to like deal with this, well, who am I, like the sense of identity and trying to figure out who they are. And in many ways, I think a lot of the YA dystopian stuff is kind of like a different take on the coming of age pieces. it's kind of like they're just trying to figure out their place in the world. And whenever we do talk about the future of the planet, we always talk about like we're saving it for the younger people, or the younger people have to fix what our mistakes are. And I think that's a big driving factor in a lot of the YA stuff, is they're the ones that have to fix like the stuff that the adults kind of screwed up, basically. So I think that's kind of, there's a lot of different things that drive the novel forward with like younger characters.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Kathy wants to know, how would you get out of this situation, and would you want to go back to the way we were before? So I guess she's talking about our pandemic and our quarantine. And I think really to unpack that question, we'd have to say, how have you seen things change? And in a good way or in a bad way right now? I mean, for me, I mean, I'm using Zoom more online video. I've lived away from my family for 14 years, and we did a video chat with people from all over the US and Canada for my dad's birthday. And we were like, we've never done this before. Why have we never done this before? So Bonnie, let's start with you.
Yeah, there's definitely some good things, like because I'm in grad school too, so now I have a little more time. So I'm not driving to work, I'm working from home, I'm not driving to campus, I have online classes now, so I have a little more time, to where sometimes it was hard to carve out of my schedule a time to see some of my friends. Now we like talk on Snapchat, or we do like we FaceTimed each other like a couple days ago, or maybe it was a couple of weeks ago. But like you said, like, why haven't I ever thought to do this before? And it's kind of like I've never thought of it. But then another thing that's been kind of annoying is I'm used to having alone time at home when like because I live with my sister, and she's usually at work, and her boyfriend are out, or my boyfriend's still at work, and I have like my alone time to do whatever I want. And now it's like there's always somebody home. So that's been like a little difficult for me. But aside from that, I think it's kind of like, wow, I need to like FaceTime my friends more often and stuff like that. So
Yes, definitely. How about you, Eve?
Same. Like, first of all, I'd like to get out of this pandemic alive. That's number one. Um, and second of all, I've reconnected with a lot of people. Like, me and some college friends had like a happy hour. We, laughed and like hadn't talked to a couple of these people in years, and we just had a good time connecting and just connecting with family members a lot more. I mean, I was pretty close to my family already, but I talk to my family a lot more. Since I work from home, this is my full-time job writing. I'm usually home a lot. But I've become a lot more invested in my daughter's education. I mean, I already was, but me having to be her mom and her teacher now is a big change. So I have a bigger appreciation for teachers, of course, and just like I would like to see people come out of this being kinder, being more helpful. I see examples of this, of people, reaching out and helping people in need. And I'm hoping that people come out of this thing a lot more kinder than they were before they went in.
I
And
agree
more
with that.
compassionate.
Yes, for sure. How about Jennifer?
Up until November, I worked exclusively from home. So the kids were at school, husband was at work, and I had all day to myself. Then week before Thanksgiving, I started working part-time out of the house, and up until mid-March. So there hasn't been a whole lot of change for me. I mean, other than the schoolwork. Yeah, when they go back, the teachers are getting so much love because I don't know how they do it. I swear my posts on Facebook are usually, I am not smarter than a first grader. Somebody come take over because I can't do this crap. But honestly, I live in Florida, and you may, the Florida man stories. Well, our governor is the epitome of that. And I really haven't seen a whole lot of change here. I mean, our restaurants are closed, but you can still do carry out and delivery, and we never went out very much. So, I mean, honestly, there's not much change down here. The roads are still just as packed. Everybody still goes to the store. Today was the first time I saw 90% of the people wearing masks. But I mean, we've been in this for how long? And it's just, they don't do it down here. They don't take it seriously. So my hope is when we do get this curve flattened enough that, things start heading off, that people remember, what was important, who was important, who kept us going. And, like you said, hopefully people are nicer and, appreciate each other more, but I don't hold out a lot of hope.
We have a question from our dear friend Marianne Moria. She wants to know, rebellion is key in a lot of dystopian and apocalyptic books. Do you have a line in the sand in your books when it comes to rebellion? How far is too far or not far enough? Let's start with Eve.
All's fair in love and war. I don't think there's a line that's too. Okay, for me, I would not do anything that would show any torturing of kids. If the story calls for it, I might allude to it. And animals, I don't like animal abuse. Just like I'll watch a horror movie or a movie and like everybody could die, but don't kill the dog. I said no. I was actually just watching what this movie called what's Why Do Fools Fall in Love, and it was like the Frankie Lyman story, and he was dangling the dog out the window. I said, oh no, please don't dangle that dog out the window. And he dropped it. I was like, oh God, I can't watch it. I made my husband turn it. I said, I don't want to watch this movie anymore. So that's my line. No kids, no animals, because that would just freak me out. And then I spent the rest of the afternoon like cuddling my dog. I can't do it.
Yeah, I hear that one for sure too. Jennifer, how about you?
It's funny, when I was writing Wish Us Luck, my mom was reading it as I wrote it. My sisters, my mom always do that. We kind of, we're so damn close that, they're always involved. But she got to one scene and I guess her phone rang and she actually threw her phone, and I had actually been calling her, and she was like, I can't believe you wrote that. I was like, well, where are you at? And it happened to be a scene with a kid. And I was like, oh, did you think I killed the kid? She goes, oh no, I know you better than that. So then I'm like, well, shit, I don't want to be, predictable. So I changed that in another book. And then I was working on a serial killer book, and somebody's like, oh, do whatever you want to the people, just don't kill the dogs. Well, fine. Now in the next book I have a scene and I'm like, don't tell me not to do something. So for me, I don't want to be predictable. So there's not really a whole lot of lines I'm willing to draw in the sand. I think I want to just, if it gets a reaction, I'm going to go for it somewhere in some book. Not necessarily the one you expect, but it'll be in one of them.
How about you, Bonnie?
I think I'm definitely on the same page with the not hurting animals thing. Like, I remember when I read Stephen King's the one scene where I think it's Patrick puts the little puppy in the fridge and closes the door, and every day the puppy's like deader and deader, and it's like, I was so upset by that. And then even I think it was like was it Do McKee maybe, where the one dog got hit by a car. I'm like, I just can't handle this. So yeah, I don't think I could ever write. I mean, I could allude to it, but I don't think I could graphically write something bad happening to an animal. I'd probably be okay with children. I'm not sure. I haven't actually tried that yet. So, but I like your idea, Jennifer, of like, don't tempt me. I might actually do it, because I want to keep people guessing. I think that's a great attitude to have with it. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll find out as I go, like, if I can. I mean, sometimes I do write stuff and then I'm like, usually if it's like something like really dark, I usually feel good getting it out, because usually it's like some weird thought I've had and I'm like working through it, and I always feel better. It's like cathartic just to get it out. But then sometimes it's like, sometimes I am kind of like, oh, that was really messed up. Where did that even come from? But so yeah, I think it'd be like, I don't know. I'll have to see, like try it out.
Awesome. Kimmy wants to know, and I think I'm gonna add to this one. She wants to know what you hope readers will take away from your books. But I want to know, in addition to that, when you wrote the book, what did you want people to take away from it? And if people go and read your books now, do you think it's the same message, or do you think maybe after living through this, there's a different message to take away from it? Let's start with Bonnie.
That's a really good question. Usually one of my biggest things that I try to do is just kind of like be yourself, because like I felt like an outcast a lot. So it's kind of, I usually have something in there where the main character doesn't feel like she fits in. So there's always her grappling with that and her sense of identity. So I always kind of want people to feel like no matter how weird you feel, like there's like a lot of people feel that aloneness or that outcast. Like a lot of people really do feel like they don't fit in places. But in regards to what's going on now, like, so maybe that even fits in with what's going on now, the like separate but not alone thing that they keep having. Is that the right hashtag? I can't remember. But kind of like how we're all in this together, like this camaraderie almost, where even if someone's going through something really major, there's usually someone you can reach out to, like some stuff like that.
That's really great. I love that. How about Eve?
I'm sorry, you gotta ask the question again. I like kind of was like somebody texted me. Sorry.
When you wrote your books, what message did you want people to take away from them? And do you think that that message has changed now, if for new readers that pick up your book?
I feel like I just wanted to write a really good story. But I kind of wanted to convey that the way my particular dystopian story was, that sometimes people people are the victim of their circumstances, and to maybe have compassion for people. Like, why are people poor? Like, why, like, people like kind of punish the poor for being poor, but it's not their fault for being that way 90% of the time. I would say 99% of the time, it's not your fault for being born into a circumstance you can't help, and that sometimes people have to do desperate things um to survive. So it might not be, why is somebody stealing? Why does somebody sell drugs? They're not always particularly nefarious reasons. They want to put food on the table for their families, So that was part of it. And then also just to write really, really hot sex. So, who people can enjoy themselves. So that's what I wanted people to take from my books.
That works. How about you, Jennifer?
Most of my books are just general romance. So I just want the reader to have fun and enjoy it, just get out of their reality. My serial killer, take something from the co-writer's side. You don't want to take anything from my serial killer. He's kind of scary. But my dystopian, I think I started as a single mom, and she saw the flashing lights outside her window and found it was the military. And it was, I hope the reader takes it as, you can break down when you have to be, but you're also just as strong as, and you can survive anything, whether you're expecting it or not. And, she ended up having help, but it wasn't what she expected or how she expected. And she still had to lean on herself and take care of, her son. So, yeah, I think it's just, yeah. And I hope that message is universal no matter when you read it.
That's awesome. Marianne wants to go back to probably the two of you that aren't afraid to cross the lines. She says, with all this catharsis, do you put disclaimers on your Amazon page? And Eve, same thing. Have you ever put disclaimers on your Amazon page? Start with Eve.
I have. I feel like for the Run series, because I feel like it's pretty hardcore, some things going on in that book. So I feel like I did for Run. And for certain things, I did a story about a serial killer, and he was the protagonist. So I feel like things that are touchy for a lot of people, I will put like a disclaimer. Most of the time, not really, because, you read one of my books, you pretty much know what you're going to get.
That makes sense. How about Jennifer?
I do not, and I probably will not in the future. I think you can put as many disclaimers and tags up as you want, and somebody's going to ignore it and get butthurt over it, and you'll get slammed. So I'm not even going to save the energy to try. You know what I mean? Read the blurb, read the reviews. You can find out pretty quickly what the story's about, whether or not it's something you want. It's like when somebody picks up an LGBT book and complains that it's male. It's like, hello. Did you not see the cover? Did you not read the two male names in the blurb? So yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Bonnie? I think I help you answer, I guess. But like your short stories, you have in horror category. So I think that kind of, even if you don't have a disclaimer in horror, people should know, right?
Yeah, and it's even like they're not that bad or graphic, but I think kind of like Jennifer was saying, like you'd have to because like you don't know what would trigger you. individual people in your audience. Like something that might trigger me won't trigger someone else. So I think that's very difficult to do. But like you said, since a lot of my stuff kind of falls under the horror, I think you would kind of know what you're getting into. But a lot of it's not, I don't think it's that graphic, but I think someone else might find it graphic. But and then like I sometimes warn my family members, like my one romance, Love Lost, my mother gave to my grandfather, and I'm like, Mom, there's a sex scene in there. Like, are you kidding me? Like, so, you know, like, but what some people find is completely fine. Other people might be all like, whoa, what is this? And I just try, like, whenever I do write a sex scene, I'm like, because under my other name, Scarlet Fox, I just did a recent romance. I did kind of tell my family this is a little more graphic with the romance than my other stuff. Like, there's like sex scenes in it, just because I don't want, because like none of my other stuff really had graphic sex scenes. So I just kind of did a slight warning on that, but that was just on my Facebook pages. Like I don't think there's anything, but I mean, it's in the romance section. So I think you should kind of know, you know, but I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe I should just trigger warning on everything just in case. I don't know.
Marianne also asks, I guess the first one would be, have you killed characters? And if you have, who was the hardest character to kill off and who was the easiest? So let's start with Bonnie.
And one of my short stories I based off of myself and one of my boyfriend's exes, and I actually killed the character who was myself. Like the character I based on myself, I killed off. And that was just, it was more like fun and stuff. But there's been times where, like I started writing in high school and I wanted to do like a serial killer thing and I couldn't kill off anybody. So like it ended up they were just like in a cave somewhere. But then eventually I did start, right. And there was one that I can't remember what it was. Because it was like older stuff. I can't remember, but like I did get really sad thinking about killing somebody off. I think if it's necessary to the plot, you have to do it. Like sometimes there's hard lessons that characters need to learn. Like J.K. Rowling, she has a list of why she killed, certain people in her book, exactly what she wanted the readers to feel, what she wanted her characters to feel. And I think it's something people shouldn't take lightly. But it's also something, if it needs to be done, it needs to be done no matter how attached you are to that character. And then sometimes I get very teary-eyed when I'm writing stuff. And I feel when there's that emotional connection that I get while writing it, I hope the reader gets the same emotional connection. So I feel like if it's something that's difficult, sometimes it takes me longer to do. Sometimes I'll stall and not want to do it. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. How about Eve?
I've never killed off any main characters before. I did kill the main antagonist for my Blood Brother series. It was my vampire series, and he was in all of my vampire books. And then I finally killed, well, I guess spoiler alert, but it's been out so long. If you haven't read them yet, well, surprise. And when I killed this character, even though I killed him, it was tough because I told his story throughout the book. I told why he was the way he was. And then when I finally killed him, I cried because it was painful, and it was painful for the people around him. Even though he did so much damage, he did so much harm to a lot of people. He was still somebody, he was still my baby. I created him, and it hurt.
Aww. Okay, Jennifer, before you answer, I want to know, do you have a kill count?
Well, shit, I was supposed to count. In my first serial cookbook I wrote with my sister, Can You Protect Them? I can't even tell you how many people I killed in there. I will tell you, I didn't feel bad for killing any of them because I was so in his head, and he calls himself the professor because it was very scientific. So every new kill was a different way, and he was trying to figure something out. So I was so fascinated with it and coming up with all these cool ideas that I didn't care who I was killing. I just wanted to do these new things. But the sequel, we haven't finished it. We're like 3/4 of the way through. But the last murder scene I did, and I swear, I think I've done like 15 in this second book already, and we're not done. the last one was so hard. I actually got invested in the character that I was like, I need a break. I haven't been able to go back into it. And my sister read an earlier scene and she's like, I can't believe you killed them. I was like, well, I was trying to do all different ages and backgrounds and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that was hard. But wait till you read this one. This one really hurts. So yeah. I think overall count's way too high.
Marianne says your Google history is definitely with the NSA. She also says, how do you handle today's ideas about toxic males in your books? Do you worry about how your heroes portrayed? Now, let's start with you, Eve, because I think yours are probably the most controversial.
At first I was worried. I used to write, most of my stuff was through publishers, but then like I started to self-publish a lot and I let loose and I, kind of let go. And I usually get a lot of not a lot. I say the majority of people who continue to read my stuff, they kind of know what they're going to get. So I do get some flack for it, but I feel like my 1-star reviews that they're like my best advertisement, because people are like, oh, there was a lot of filthy sex and this guy, he did this to her and did that to her and she did this, and then there's like people are like, ooh, I want to read that book. And those 1-star reviews that slam the things that my characters do, those are my best advertisements, and I appreciate every single one of them. And usually the good outweighs the bad. I get mostly good reviews, but I used to be a little apprehensive, but now, if people read my books, they pretty much know what they're going to get, and I don't hold back, because I kind of do like a scumbag, a redeemable scumbag. I tell people that I write villains, and because villains are a lot more interesting, and there's always a reason why somebody is the way they are, unless they're a true psychopath. I don't generally write true psychopaths unless they are the antagonists in the book. So I don't regret anything that I've written or the people that I've written, and working on somebody who's super grimy right now and love it.
That's awesome. How about you, Jennifer?
Honestly, the only time I kind of struggle with it is when I'm writing the paranormal shifters, because they're supposed to be so alpha. And I have a tendency to make my women just as strong. So I struggle with making him not be a dick and then her still be as strong. And then I dislike the character if he's too much alpha. So I'm always bringing him back. So I think I just more struggle with that than I do making him, too bad. I think that was, my serial killer is actually loved by a lot of people, and I was like, y'all not supposed to like him. You're supposed to hate him. You're not. So yeah, I don't know. Everybody's like something different. So it's no matter what you write, somebody's going to be thinking you're pushing the boundaries, or it's not a character they like. But there's going to be just as many people that love him. So no matter what you do to him, somebody out there's going to love it.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I kind of came across like the same issue when reading some of the paranormal romance ones with like the alpha males, how they're so all like, I need to protect my woman. Like that always drove me crazy, because I take care of myself. No one takes care, and I have that type of mentality. So when I did my paranormal romance, Frost and Fangs, I decided instead, because I love wolves, but I'm like, I don't want to do a wolf shifter for that reason, just because the alpha male thing drives me crazy. So I went with a face shifter, and I still did a little bit where they both have this mating bond where like they both have this desire to protect each other, but I tried to kind of like dole back on the like, no one, like, I don't know, because sometimes too much of that's my mate and now I'm angry, like, I don't know, some of that just kind of drives me crazy. But I mean, that's how the animal is, so I mean, it completely makes sense that it's there, but sometimes it just drives me a little batty. So yeah, that was more difficult, but got around it.
Nice. Well, we're coming at the end of the hour, so my last question for all of you is, can you tell me what your most recent release was, and tell me what you're working on now or what we're going to see from you out next? Let's start with Bonnie.
I just released Frost and Fangs, and it was under my alternate name, Scarlet Fox. That was a paranormal shifter romance between a fae cop shifter and a dragon shifter. And then I've been working on, under my Bonnie Lynn Carroll name, Blue Horizon. I've been doing that for like the last 3 years because I've been trying to make something more longer and more developed. So I didn't want to rush and get this one out. And then I kind of went to grad school, so it's been put on hold. And that's like my more dystopian one where like aliens kind of invade the earth and stuff like that. So hopefully within the next 2 years, I'll get that one out.
Awesome. How about Jennifer?
My most recent release was Black Hollow, Fairly Sweet. It's in a shared world of Black Hollow. It's a witch that runs a candy store in Black Hollow and a half fairy, half, I'm not even sure. He surprised me at the end and said he wasn't all what I thought. And when I go to write the sequel, I'll figure it out. I'm working on a horror story that's going to be in a anthology coming out August 1st, I think. Okay, I don't have it on my calendar, so I'm not sure exact date. That one, I think I'm going to push the boundaries with kids, maybe. I haven't decided what I'm doing there yet. But I'm also working on my next Black Hollow story and a new series with a friend of mine, Sharon Reiser. It's going to be kind of dystopian with gods and a competition type thing.
Awesome. How about Eve?
My last release was co-written with my writing partner under our pen name Taylor Vaughn, and that was His to Keep. That came out a little last year. That wasn't part of our Alien Overlords series, with alien abduction, breeding, forced breeding. Not really forced, but got to read it. And I am working on the next book in that, Theirs to Keep, and also my book Covet, which is basically like a brother who is like who has unfinished business with his brother's wife. So that should be one of my signature alpha holes.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Well, we're at the end of the hour, so I want to thank all three authors for being with us today and ask the readers to go check out their books, check out their social media. And I really, really appreciate you guys being here today. I had a lot of fun talking to you. Anybody that wants to tune in for the next panel, it's going to be at 4:30, and it's Witches, Magically Delicious Stories with Millie Taden, Viola Grace, Eva Chase, Marianne Moria, Jen Thompson, Elle Boone, and Alexa Gregory. So subscribe to the YouTube channel and set notifications, or we'll post the link on the RTC social media. So again, thanks for tuning in to the readers, and thanks for coming, authors.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.